we're the only show that has fangs in every universe, including our own. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Morbius, the Living Vampire. Well, I'm sorry, just Morbius, because they wouldn't have the balls to put the full title. Morbius is a movie that's a comic book movie set in the Spider-Man cinematic universe, which started, I guess, with Venom, or maybe Tom Holland's. It's just kind of messy the way the whole cinematic Marvel universe goes. But it's not set in the MCU, but it's set in a different universe that is Sony's, if that makes sense. And so, I had the pleasure of seeing this movie, and this movie is directed by Daniel Esposito, and who directed Life. And this movie stars Jared Leto, Matt Smith, Jared Harris, and Tyrese Gibson. And this movie, it's a comic book origin story of Morbius, the famous vampire villain in the Spider-Man comics and in the animated series and such forth. And so, full disclosure, I am a huge Morbius fan. I loved Morbius, the Living Vampire. That is one of my favorite characters growing up as a kid. Ever since I saw him in Spider-Man the Animated Series, I was just obsessed with his design. And I even loved playing him in the Spider-Man PS2 game. For Spider-Man, it's called Spider-Man 3 for the PS2. I loved playing that level with Morbius. I was super excited when I heard that they were making a Morbius movie. Because every year, here's the full disclosure. Every year, like, I remember when my family rented the VHS to Big Fish. I saw the teaser for Spider-Man 2. I assumed Morbius was going to be the villain because I was like, Morbius, Morbius, Morbius. And it was Doc Ock. I was kind of bummed, but then at the same time, I did not know at the time that his main rogues were going to be a center before his lesser known rogues. So, but I was young. I was like a little boy at the time. So, I mean, I was not really aware of even the internet, much less. So, and then of course as I grew up older and stuff, like after Spider-Man 3, happened and everything, and Sam Raimi once did an interview where he was like, I would love it if Morbius would be, I love doing vampire. I would love if Morbius would be a villain in the movie, and I actually had me excited. I was really excited. I'm like, yes, please make this happen. And it never happened. I was kind of bummed. Then of course, later on, the Amazing Spider-Man movies happened, and then I said, oh, Morbius is going to eventually pop up, and I'm like, ooh, and then finally I heard they were making the Morbius movie. I got so excited. And then when I heard Jared Leto was cast, I'm like, this is going to be a great movie, great franchise. And so I was really looking forward to this movie. I'm a huge Morbius fan, and, I really, really, really went into this movie with high hopes, and unfortunately, it's not as great as I wanted it to be. Now, I'm not saying it's terrible, but I'm just saying it's a basic comic book movie. And what I say about that is, it has the same formula as a predictable movie. It has the basic formula of every comic book movie. It feels like it could have came out in 2004. You have a guy who goes to an origin, and then you have his friend who becomes the villain, and they have to fight each other at the end. He kills his friend, and then he basically goes away because he's a fugitive now to the world, or he's a superhero to the world, and so that's who he is. And so that's kind of the basic comic movie. The formula is going before the MCU or before Nolan started with his Dark Knight trilogy. That was for anywhere from the 99 to 2008 was the formula of a basic comic movie. And if this would have came out back then, I think most people would not have said anything or complained because that was the basic formula. But I feel like as an audience now, we're kind of, I want to say spoiled, because we kind of ever since Endgame now, we kind of want to be like, it has to be like a 9 or a 10 for us to even acknowledge its existence. And, and I think, I was talking to somebody the other day, I'm like, if Blade would have came out today, if Blade would have hit, it would not be as well received as it was. And which it's true, because that movie is a basic structured movie, and so it's basically is one of those things where it just happens to be this world that it's also kind of building in towards something, and it's not it kind of reminded me of the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. Although I don't really like that movie, I think this movie's much better than the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. But I feel like this movie, unlike the Tom Cruise movie, this movie was basically world building, but the Tom Cruise movie was based on world building only. Versus this movie, which was a generic story that has some world building in it. And I do like some things about this movie. I know I could sit there and shit on this movie all day long, and I'm not going to. because I do feel like there are some good things in this movie. It's not just a piece of shit movie. You know, like, it's not a great movie. I would say it's a little bit under Venom in a sense where it hasn't really a much memorable scene or moments, but it does have some stuff that I did like. Like, for instance, I really liked Jared Leto's performance as Morbius. I thought he was really good. You know, I actually liked his performance, and I was like, you know, like, I could see him being in the Spider-Man universe. I could even see him fighting Spider-Man one day. I thought he was clever, you know. I was like, I liked his performance. I was like, you know, he did feel like at times when he needed to be Morbius, I thought that was clever and that was unique. But when he was Michael, you know, I thought, you know, that was great as well. I mean, he kind of felt like he had that demon in him of a vampire, which is a demon in him, and then when he needs that blood urge, and I like that aspect of it, and I thought that was, you know, unique, and that I thought was kind of clever. And also, I want to acknowledge that there is a nod to Spider-Man the animated series, where, because in the animated series, that he was not allowed to drink blood because of the comic book code and everything, and because it's children's television, so they made it plasma, and so they kind of stuck kind of to that in a way where it's like, instead of it's artificial blood, where it's not blood. And I'm like, that's clever. I thought that was really clever, because it's kind of keeping the tradition going with Morbius where he can't drink blood. Because when he does, and I'm like, that to me really made me kind of excited. I was like, you know, that kind of got me like, all right, I'm on board with this, you know. And also, you know, I really liked the friendship between him and Matt Smith. I love Matt Smith. Okay, I'm a big fan of Who. I'm a Whovian, you know, and I love the David Tennant run the best, but I liked his Doctor Who. And so when I found out, I always say, like, he should get more roles as, like, villains, because he plays a great villain. You know, if he ever got a villain, he played a great villain. And I liked him as the villain in this movie. He plays a friend who, you know, he wants to be cured. He has the same disease as Morbius, or he has not the same disease, but he has a disease like Morbius, and they grew up together, and he's like, one day I'm going to cure you, Morbius, like, one day I'm going to cure you, but he becomes like this vampire, and he can't cure him, and he, you know, he really wants to, and so somehow, it doesn't really show him how. I want to acknowledge that it does not show him how he gets cured. I guess he stole something that we don't see, which I'm like, how is that possible? That we don't see him steal something and become, you know, like, I thought that was kind of odd, you know, which I'm like, I'm sure, you know, like when I saw the lady get killed in the hallway, I'm like, I'm sure that's Matt Smith. I'm sure that's not Morbius. Although there was an idea, I did think about, well, maybe Matt Smith's not the villain. Maybe it's Jared Harris who's the villain, the doctor, other doctor. I'm like, maybe he's the villain. I'm like, I was kind of like, all right, maybe it could go either way, you know. But obviously, I knew it was going to be Matt Smith at the end. But like, you know, the idea, like, there is some, like, the villain, like, I love, one of my favorite scenes is when he's changing, getting dressed to go out, and then he gets into that bar tussle, and he goes and kills that guy. And I liked every time he's just going out there killing people. I thought that was fun. I was like, that's awesome. I like that. And I do like, you know, I do like, you know, the idea, like, okay, we're going to overload, like, the chemicals that's going to overload the bats and kill them. Like, I thought that was unique. I'm like, okay, all right, that's cool. And I like that they brought it in the third act to use it against him, because sometimes movies, they'll create an idea and then they'll just forget about it halfway through the movie, and I'm like, really? And I really like that. I thought that was unique, awesome. I do like that this movie does touch upon, is in the Spider-Man universe, and there are some things I don't like, okay? I do like the cast. I think everyone's great in the movie. I think the visual effects are pretty decent. I really do, and I really think that we should really, you know, the visual effects are pretty good. I know some people complain about it, but I'm like, I actually thought it was unique. I mean, it's not like in-game level, but I mean, it's still pretty great effects. Like, I couldn't do those effects, you know? And, you know, and I also do like, you know, I thought the score was pretty good. And I know some people complain about the post-credit scene. I like seeing Michael Keaton back as the Vulture. And I understand the scene doesn't make sense in context, but I'm like, that was fun to see, you know, Michael Keaton back, and, you know, in a post-credit scene setting up the Sinister Six. I'm like, I'm all for it, you know. You know, the scene doesn't make much sense compared to the other scene. But I thought the scene was fine, and I honestly, it's not a bad idea. But I do want to talk about some negatives, okay? And there's a lot of negatives I can talk about. I want to talk about the basic ones I noticed, okay? The negatives I want to talk about is, one, the first 10 minutes of this movie feel like it's all cut differently. Like, for instance, it starts with a bat, then it goes to, it starts with, like, Morbius in the cave, then it goes back to the past, then it goes back to the present, and I'm just like, why wouldn't you just re-edit that scene? Like, why couldn't you do the past first, and then do like the bat stuff in the caves, or you could literally do the flashback of the black bats in the cave while he's in the lab talking to the doctor. Why did you have to do it that way? Or why didn't you just do the bats in the cave, then do to New York, and then whenever him and Matt Smith are talking as adults, you do a flashback to the child? I'm just saying, there's other ways you could have done it instead of like the flippy floppy floopy floppy, and I'm just like, that makes no sense to me. You know, why you would do it that way. And it also, there's really not much of a like a 20-year later. I don't think, I don't know, I have to go watch this again, but I don't think there's a 20-year like thing where it says 20 years later. I think you just have to basically figure it out for yourself. And also, the opening credits and the closing credits are the exact same thing. Like, it just has a giant M, and then it does the same exact credits where it's just the same font, same logo and everything of the same credits where it says Morbius. I'm just like, they couldn't even do different credits. I mean, really? And also, there is like no, like, you know, usually with these Sony movies that I always look forward to is they have some kind of rap artist or musician to do a cover song for something for the movie as a tie-in. They didn't have that in this movie. They just feel like they didn't even feel like spending money for that. But yet they can market it falsely. Yeah. The movie, alright, I'm going to talk about the false marketing in a second, but there is a scene also in the movie. Alright, there's two scenes I want to talk about. There's a fight scene between Morbius and Matt Smith's character. I forget his name. Like Milo and Morbius, where they're fighting, and it just looks like almost like slow motion action figure. Almost like looks like QuickTime PS4 fight scene, like a QuickTime PS4 fight scene where he's like, click the A button, click the B button. I was like, what is it with this fight scene? I mean, really? I mean, it's just like, it doesn't have to be slowed down. Just fight normally. I mean, come on. And also, there's a scene where like he pings. It pings. Like he's looking for the girl, and it just pings. And I'm like, why is it like, it's almost, it looks like a video game. It almost, some parts come off like a video game. It feels like they played a lot of video games. Like, look at you. The gamer's gonna shit themselves when they see this. Like, I'm just like watching and going, this would work in a video game, but it's not a video game. It's a movie. And I'm just there watching that going, well, I would not do that. I would not. And also, what was I was gonna say? Oh yeah. And then there's some science stuff in the movie that's not even real. Like where they're talking about, oh, bats are the only species that like blood, and I'm like, I'm sure mosquitoes would very just much agree with you on that, and sharks as well. But at the same time, you know, they're not calling Morbius the living mosquito, so, or Morbius the living shark, even though that'd probably be awesome. But yeah, that's the negatives I want to talk about in the movie that I had. But and also the post-credit scene, I understand some people had issues with it because it's like at the end of the Spider-Man, spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home, but at the end, Doctor Strange's spell sent everybody back to the universe, so it made no sense for him to send Michael Keaton, who plays the Vulture, to Morbius's universe, even though Morbius is set in the same universe as Venom, and Venom got sent back to the universe. Why would he send there? Everybody would be sent to their correct universes, in theory. So I think what it really is that Sony's probably getting ready to get all their characters back. Because if you watch the No Way Home, Spider-Man's like, I'm on my own now. So I think that's what they're trying to get at, where I think the Madam Web movie or whatever movie down the future will send Spider-Man into the Venom's universe, and that'll be Sony's universe again. And I think that's what it was, just sending the Vulture into that universe so they could set up the Sinister Six, and that way they don't have to be part of the Vulture, since part of the MCU now, which... That, I mean, I was fine with, because I kind of understood the kind of, I understand a lot of people are upset about that scene, because it doesn't make sense, like, logically. But at the same time, I mean, it's Sony's franchise, they can do whatever they want, even if it doesn't make sense. I honestly thought it'd be cool if Venom showed up at the end instead, you know, instead of Vulture, but, you know, it's fine. And I want to talk about post-credit scene. Not the post-credit scene, but the trailers. I've had a lot of people asking me and talking to me about this. The trailers in the movie are falsely marketed in the movie, and a lot of people have been talking about this. And there is a scene in the movie, there's two shots in the movie. One of an Oscorp building, and the other of a newspaper, not a newspaper, but of a mural of Spider-Man that says murder. And it's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but it's actually an image taken from the PS4 video game, and him walking by the mural. that was in the trailer and marketed like this was going to be the next Spider-Man universe, you know, theme. And the movie, and it was heavily marketed that way. And there was even set photos of like Spider-Man, where Spider-Man on the bus at. That I'm not going to really be upset about those because those were on set photos that were leaked to the public. So I can't really be mad at that that was not in the movie or shown, because that was probably never meant to be in the movie. It was just for context, I guess. And so I'm not really upset about that. So I'm not going to talk about that. But really, the two things that are in the trailer that I want to talk about is the mural, and the director even has said in interviews was just in the trailer to, you know, basically hype the fans up. Same with the Oscorp building. That was just stock footage from Amazing Spider-Man 2. And that kind of pissed me off because it's like you're misleading the movie. Like, this is the second Jared Leto movie that they've done something. A studio has done, not just Sony, but another studio, Warner Brothers, did the same thing with Jared Leto in the Suicide Squad. They mismarketed the movie and made it imply that he was the main villain of the movie, and he was not. And then tricked a bunch of people. And then when I went and saw the movie, like, he's barely. Not only is he not the villain of the movie, he's barely in this movie. And Sony did the same thing with Amazing Spider-Man 2. They added scenes in the trailer and voiceovers and stuff that are not in the movie, and they were doing it to sell the movie. And Sony did this again with Morbius, and a lot of people are kind of pissed off because when you're misleading your audience, you're just creating a bad narrative for yourself. And so if you keep doing that, people are going to call you out because you don't think it's going to spread like wildfire. I think they're hoping is they could trick people so when they go see the movie, that they'll just be like, oh, okay, well, oh, it's not in the movie, that's fine. No, I mean, a lot of people are going to see these answers, and they're not getting these answers because they were tricked into going to see it. I mean, imagine you're going to see a Superman movie, and Superman's not even in the movie, and it's not even a Superman movie. I mean, you know, like, there's people right now that are suing a studio because a person wasn't in a movie, like, and I kind of agree with them. I think that if you mislead a market a movie, you deserve, you do deserve to pay for those consequences. There are consequences to your actions, and I think if you're going to do something stupid like that, unfortunately, you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes, and so unfortunately, and I really think, and I'm not upset about the director or the cast or anything like that, because it's not their fault. It's a stupid marketing team that, obviously put that in there to create a false narrative towards the movie, and I think that really is disrespectful to the movie itself. If you really don't have faith in your movie, then just put a bunch of action scenes together and put like a rock song over it and then sell it that way. That happens a lot with a lot of movies. I mean, Wrath of the Titans did that when they knew their movie was bad. They put a Marilyn Manson Sweet Dreams over it, and guess what? It worked for them. So I mean, if you're gonna, don't do that. I mean, just be honest with your audience, because you trick your audience, eventually they're just gonna not even go to your movies. Now, how's that gonna look for Kraven the Hunter now? Because when they go watch Kraven the Hunter or Madam Web or Venom 3, they're just gonna be like, well, are these scenes really in the movie, or are they just falsely marketed to us again, like with Morbius? Just saying. But if I had to give this movie a grade,